Good evening. Nice to see everybody. I'd like to call the North Augusta City Council study session from Monday, December the 8th, 2025 to order. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here, and we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. What I would say is, in way of opening, is that we've got a very full agenda this evening. The focus items are going to eat up, I would imagine, a fair amount of time because they're all weighty topics. We are submitting the department details that you have as hard copy, but we're not going to have the directors up here to make any comments from the podium. And I will go through at least a rudimentary review of the council agenda for next week. And then we'll get into our focus items from there. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn into our agenda. And the first item we have here is under old business listed public safety ordinance number 2025-30 to regulate the operation of golf carts within the city North Augusta, including nighttime use, second reading. I have nothing new to add to this particular ordinance. We made some recommendations that are listed here within the ordinance itself. There was some robust discussion about additional caveats to that ordinance, but our staff recommendation remains unchanged based on our city attorney's recommendation to go with it as is. And if we get additional information through either the Attorney General's office or other kind of legal findings that we can make modifications or amendments to this ordinance, then we'll propose those at that time based on council feedback. But our current ordinance is unchanged from the first reading that was before you. So I'll pause for any questions because I know that was a big talking point for a lot of folks.
Yes, Mr. Clifford, do we have the ability to limit a road that may be 35 miles per hour speed limit off of golf cart use? Or is it, or maybe Chief can answer that one.
Yeah, as part of that statute, the options that you have is the method, time, and location. So if there's a certain road that meets it and you want to prevent people from driving on it, you can do that.
All right. Yeah, the couple roads that have me concerned are Walnut Lane and Five Notch, which are both 35 mile per hour or less, but very, very busy roads as well.
Yep, I agree with you, John.
I also agree. Also in Bunning Avenue, that they hardly ever stop at Bunning and Robin, even though they're supposed to. And the way they zip down Marion Avenue, when, I just, in the dark, I just don't see anything good happening if somebody comes off one of those side streets and somebody's going through there well above the speed limit.
Yeah, the comments and the support, or at least the requested support that I've gotten to, I think there are parts of the city where this makes great sense. But I think there are other parts of the city where my concern is safety, visibility for people. In Riverside Village and Hammond's Ferry, River Club perhaps, I think those golf cart use makes great sense. But a place like Walnut Lane or Pisgah even, which would be a 35 mile per hour zone, maybe even a 30 mile per hour zone on Pisgah, does have me quite concerned.
And then even there are some spaces where I would be okay with daytime operation at 35 miles an hour, but absolutely not at night, at 35 miles an hour, because how much people tend to more speed through those neighborhoods at night.
I do not want it to become a overburden of public safety to be regulating golf cart use and unsafe conditions in a lot of these areas. My comment.
Well, I think it's valid. I guess my question is, those are a couple that's popped up now, how do we go about doing that? Because heck, next week, maybe I'll think of 3 roads, and next thing we're going to know, we're going to have, I mean, we could segment this thing to a point to where, I'm not saying we can't do that, but then, I don't know how you, I think roads like Five Notch, I mean, why would anybody need to be on a golf cart?
Yeah,
I think there's some roads, I don't know how you,
well, what you can do, I mean,
how we do that.
we have the right to limit them, but the other thing I think is when you start determining these, I'm just wondering if some of these roads, if you restrict, then you restrict the people from traveling where they're wanting to get to at all. I mean, Walnut Lane. A lot of those places there, if you can't drive a golf cart on Walnut Lane, they can stay within the subdivision where they are, but they can't go anywhere else. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we may not want to do it somewhere, but I think we need to look and see if there's an alternate route or path that the people can use. And we certainly can come back and add to this ordinance later and put these streets are restricted. But I would just suggest you have a pretty good thought and review it totally before you just say not on this road.
Well, I think we ought to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be an evolving thing. I think the ability to enforce when you spiderweb it like that and have various roads that are, various roads that aren't trying to do it. And I think, I mean, again, I've got some issues with not having seatbelts with some of the age stuff, but I think there comes a point too where you kind of have to trust adults to make adult smart decisions and not do stupid stuff. And if they are, then you react to that. And I think we could probably all come up with a dozen roads that need to be, but to Kelly's point, that's going to restrict some ability to move throughout the city. So I just think we need to be careful. I mean, I 100% get the argument. I think certain parts of 5 notch are 45, certain parts are 35, and you're right. I can't imagine a situation where it would make sense for somebody to get off and go for a significant amount of distance on 5 notch road. So, you know, that's a large road. I could probably get behind that, but I think if we start getting to where we're piecemealing this road and that road, it's going to become very, very difficult to enforce.
It is, my understanding is, it is illegal to pass a golf cart unless there is a noted approved passing lane. Because a golf cart is going slow on the right-hand side of the road doesn't mean that you're allowed to pass him if there's a double line.
I mean, I think it's the same with cyclists or anything else. I mean, it's you obey the rules of the road, you know? I mean, you're right.
Again, my concern is safety. I think I would be more apt to. It's not that I'm against it, but I would be more comfortable in limiting the use of this to certain parts of the city and then expanding it as we have a bit more time to study it.
Maybe choosing zones that we approve of rather than singling out streets we don't.
You know, I can see anybody living in the Hammond Hill area being able to drive to Riverview Park or Hammond's Ferry, drive into the stadium or the River Club, and driving in those areas. They seem to be high destination areas that we have. I could see people using it significantly to go to Riverview Park. And I think that would be a great asset to our community. I can see them also going down to the pool, down the Hammond Hill pool, driving down that way. Once I start crossing roads, I know that I know to cross on Bunting, crossing Martintown Road, there's a tunnel. Are they allowed in the tunnel? Carts are not allowed in the tunnel.
They can cross the road.
Yeah, they can. You're right.
What do you think, Chief?
Right. You can't cross the road. Yeah, the tunnel was my question.
So it's just like you said, it just needs to be something that's enforceable and we know where it is. If you make it more complicated, it's going to be harder for the citizens to know what the rules are in order to follow them.
Are other communities that have golf cart usage allowed have signage, perhaps a small golf cart sign, or is there something that identifies it as a golf cart accessible road?
I can't say I've ever seen that, Councilman. I've seen some of the coastal communities have like cart paths that are marked as, you know, bicycles or golf carts, you know, specifically, and no other kind of vehicles, but I've not seen a dedicated, you know, cart Lane, but again, my experience is limited, so I can't tell you that's the totality of how the state of South Carolina handles golf carts.
Chief, if I could ask you directly, are you concerned about a safety issue with golf carts on some of these roads, or is this just something I've got?
I'm going to refer back to Councilman Toole's statement. We depend on adults to make adult decisions in safety. Like you've got to have your headlights, you've got to do that, you've got to do that. If everyone's doing the speed limit, then it's going to do it. But anytime someone's involved in a wreck involving a golf cart, your risk of injury is greater.
I agree that we have to rely on adults to make the adult decisions, but this is a unique situation where we may have a non-adult 16-year-old driver, and now the state has set it up where a 13-year-old could be on the back hanging off, waving their arms because they're not wearing a seatbelt. So I don't think this is, so much relying. I think the fear is what's going to happen to the kids in our community, not the adults, and I think we all might be feeling that fear a little bit.
I think then you come down to parenting issues.
All I know is our take over the last years with any resolutions or ordinances is that, we make an ordinance, we make a resolution, guess what? We can change it. So there's been a number of things that we have done for the first time, and we've always had the caveat that let's see how things play out. We've done that with the noise ordinance. So I think these are all great points, and I don't disagree with those concerns on some of those roads. I still think we need to move forward with it, and then we'll just see where we are.
Not to belabor the point, but I would prefer to be able to expand the use of golf carts and identify areas of the city where we would have a better chance of evaluating it in our community, rather than making a blanket approval anywhere in the community where it's 35 miles per hour or less, and then shrinking it back.
John, I guess my only question is, how are you going to do that? I mean, how are you going to, how restrictive are you going to get it? And how are you going to then eliminate people from the rapids from being able to go to their swimming pools, or the people in my neighborhood to be able to loop around and go into the next neighborhood beside to get to the swimming pool or the park, or Walnut Lane to be able to jump on and get to the park in the back of the neighborhood? I mean, all of these places have amenities where it would make sense. And quite frankly, people are using their golf carts now to go to those places. So you're getting more restrictive at that point. And I still go back to the bicycle argument. I mean, there are people riding bicycles on every road in this city following the rules of the road. I'm assuming that it's 16 or older can operate a bicycle. I mean, you follow the rules of the road, and I get there are additional risks. And I agree with Dennis that I've got concerns about some of the age situations too, that I feel like we need to figure out a way to address within the constraints that the state's put us under to address those. I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I understand, and completely, I don't disagree with the sentiment at which you're saying it, but I think that trying to figure out how you restrict that is going to, well, one, I think it's going to be difficult. Two, I think it's going to be an enforcement issue. Three, I'm not sure that I can decide, or that we can sit up here and decide, well, okay, you live in Hammond's Ferry, you want to go to the ballpark, you can do that, but again, you live in my neighborhood and you want to go to the adjoining neighborhood to go to the swimming pool. Can't do that. Can't go to the park, that's in the back of the neighborhood, because that's not allowed, because now, even though you're doing it, we're restricting it. I don't know. I just, to the mayor's point, I just feel like we need to, the law is what the law is. Let's put it out there, let it go, monitor it. And if we start seeing some of these things, and as we start getting feedback, because I can assure you, we're not the only community having concerns like these. Some, I think, are addressing it proactively and taking the risk. Others are probably taking a more cautious approach and reaching out to Attorney General for opinions and those sorts of things to try to figure it out. I mean, we're going to get some clarity to these things, and we start fine tuning it from that clarity.
Well, you know, when this all came up a couple of years ago, we've been having citizens ask us for a few years, and then especially when it looked like Representative Hickson, things on the State House were going to start passing. So again, all the feedback I've gotten, whether it's been emails, whoever, mostly it comes from Hammond's Ferry, Riverside Village, Hammond Hills. Again, those are been the loudest. So, you know, I don't know. I think there's all valid concerns, but to Kevin's point, I think we have to, I think we address it if there really becomes an issue, but it's not like I've had a lot of people on the other side of Five Notch up there by Mossy Creek saying, hey, I want to be able to have my golf cart at 10 o'clock at night. I don't know how much people are golf cart riding, you know, in Bunning. So I think we can kind of minutia this thing, not get anything done is my concern. But it's very valid. I hear you.
Yep, I agree with that
But
too,
I
but
think
also,
we can, again, we're trying to do something. It all goes back to, quality of life, and we're trying to provide something that is adding quality of life in North Augusta. And on all the things we're doing, there may be situations where we have to pull back the reins. But I think not to move forward at all when we're being asked from the majority of the people who are going to be golf carting. I don't know. I think we would just think we could just let this thing flounder around.
I agree with Representative Toole. If you start trying to pick and choose neighborhoods, then like it's like you're playing favoritism. You're excluding out. I can easily see where, like Mr. Kevin said, you know, you've got other neighborhoods, rushing waters. You want to get to the pool in the neighborhood, or you've got a neighbor having a dinner at their house or something, and you want to be able to drive your golf cart down there, and you can't because we restrict it because we're picking and choosing areas of certain neighborhoods.
you know, and also not to mention public safety. I mean, that's just more strain on them too.
I agree with everything y'all are saying, but I think that this may be more tailored to like beachfront towns to have bumper to bumper traffic. And not every town in South Carolina is a beachfront town with bumper to bumper traffic. And I agree that we should probably go ahead and do this, but I don't think that we should just cast it into the air and let it go. I think we're going to have to come back and revisit this as issues pop up.
And we might, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's okay.
And I don't want citizens to feel like, oh, we're up here trying to pick and choose for your neighborhood, because where you live, you may be less responsible. But I definitely see like differences in traffic patterns at night on some roads that are 35, like Old Edgefield Road, you know, up behind Our Lady. I just don't know how that's going to work when a golf cart pulls out onto that road in front of somebody at night. You know, because you know they're not just going to do 35. Every car up there going up that road doesn't do 35. And I see your point about the parentage, but you know, I may parent my kid very well to drive that cart, but I can't always control who's going to hop on the back of it. I'm not always there, and we're not always there as parents, but I do see both sides of this. Very frustrating that we've been left with so little wiggle room to kind of move this along.
So, you know, way this will work is, again, we're going to, next Monday is when we'll vote on this. And again, at that time, we'll have public comment and we'll have council discussion.
Let me ask one.
And if you at the end of that time, if you feel led to vote against it, then absolutely everybody has that right. That's how we'll do it.
Let me ask Chief one more question. Chief, if you pull over a golf cart and there's a kid on there and you don't expect they're of age, how far with a juvenile can you even go on the spot to make them prove their age? I mean, they don't have any identification.
So, I mean, if there's a traffic violation that goes on, we can ask people to identify themselves and we can follow that all the way through. But obviously, if it's a juvenile, we're gonna have to get in touch with parents to go further with that.
Thank you.
I think we can move along.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council, move on to new business. Quick item here will be the oath of office for a new municipal judge administered by the mayor. And then we'll move down to planning and development, resolution number 2025-40, accepting a deed dedication for the street sanitary sewer, stormwater collection and fire suppression systems and associated easements and rights of way, along with a maintenance guarantee and letter of credit for Renfield at Chanticleer. And I think you all were with us at the Joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting where we went with the trolley and through the various neighborhoods. So this is on the backside of Chanticleer, and you saw the lots that were detailed there. This is a routine item through planning that you would get for any of the neighborhoods. So I don't think there's anything, toward there to really debate. Next item we'd have was under number 8 and 9. I'm actually going to defer to our Assistant City Administrator, JD McCauley, because he's got two things that are parks related, so I'll defer over to him.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The number 8 is establishing fishing access and other usage rules in the City of North Augusta public waterways. And what this is to establish what you can and cannot do in our lakes and our streams and along the Savannah River. So right now we have a fishing license that we go through Parks and Recreation to get. This would change that to be that your South Carolina fishing license would be valid, and then also establishes where you can fish and where you cannot. One of them that's a major focus item is Brick Pond Park. This would remove the ability to fish in one of the two ponds. Right now, I believe it's the east pond you can fish in. The west pond you can fish in, the east pond you cannot. This would remove fishing from both of those and also would not allow you to enter either one of those bodies of water in a boat. So that's the big change here, but also it looks to establish citywide what you can and cannot do in our waterways.
There are 4 lakes at Brick Pond.
I believe there are 2 east and west, from what I understand. I have to look at a map. Sorry, I'm not
There's one on either side of the road.
Correct.
Center Street.
Yes.
And then there's a second one as you get closer to the stadium. Then there's a large one to the right. There's at least 4, right? Mr. Meyer?
That's the same pond, the one by the stadium. isn't it?
Yeah, I think we break those up into east and west from our. Yeah, so what we do is we on east and west of Center Street, we break those up. I know they're separated by, walkways, but they're categorically, we have them all kind of into one, east and west. They're broken up by little berms, but what we're saying is in neither side of Center Street, on both these Brick Pond Park, no fishing, no boats in all of those. So if you're looking to what would be west side of Center Street, I see what you're saying. They're separated by berms and pathways, but that's all one.
Consider that one lake.
We're calling that one. We call that west.
And the large one that is off of Center Street, that's in the back, that has its own parking area where you go in by the parking garage.
Correct. That's
one. That's all one lake.
that is all one. Yes.
That one looked like the best one to fish at. That's the one that people fished in the most.
Correct.
And does this ordinance say no fishing in there?
Correct.
I don't like that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that?
I think this is where we kind of start looking at how important some of the green spaces we have left as a city are and what we do to preserve them. I love fishing. There's a lot of places around here you can fish. I've gone down there myself and pulled out unattended fishing rods and lines. It's ridiculous down there. Miss Sandy Zanko, who is on the Brick Pond Committee, went down there after a council meeting one night and pulled a bird out of there that was wrapped up in the fishing line that was left unattended. There are endangered species that come through our brick ponds. More people go down there to view wildlife than to fish. More people use it for photography and art. And I think because of that, I'm not that guy that's gonna say, I know no hunting, no fishing, but I think because of how important it is, that it's the right thing to do to protect it going forward.
Yeah, it is. John, just to help you out on that is this really spearheaded, when we formed the Brick Pond Park Committee, this was kind of fell under their focus with what they were seeing, have seen a lot with that. And it's going to do, to Dennis' point, it'll do more harm than if we keep doing what we're doing, because there's a lot of people who there are people who go down there who don't understand anything about the brick ponds, they don't take care of it. And so, I mean, I kind of look at it as part of the recommendation from that group that we kind of formed to listen to them, because they kind of have their ear, to the pavement, so to speak, as far as what's happening down there. So that's kind of my reason. But again, we're going to vote on this on next Monday, and be either up or down. Everybody gets a vote. That's a great thing about what we got.
Okay. Barring any other comments or questions, we'll move on to the next item. It's a follow-up from an earlier resolution that you passed. This is authorizing a contract for us to enter into an agreement with the company Avive that does the 4-minute community. We won the MASC impact grant for this, and this is just us entering in the agreement to actually execute that program in the next start the program next year. So that'll come before you, and that agreement is it gets us off and running. And again, that's a reminder that's putting out AEDs into the community, trains people to use them, and is integrated with our public safety 911 EMS system.
We had a study session on that.
Yes, sir. And Jim, that's it for those two items, barring any comments or concerns from council. Back to you.
All right, council, that would conclude our agenda review for next week. Again, we're going to bypass department details and go to the first of our 3 focus items. And so we have here this evening, the first is the Georgia Avenue traffic calming. Joe Robertson from Kimley Horn is here to give an update. And really what we're looking for here out of the council is any last minute steering guidance. We've had numerous staff meetings with Kimley Horn. The mayor was briefed a couple weeks ago, gave some input and feedback. And so here we are to get a final conditions check, if you will, from the council to make sure that this meets the requirements for what the council would like to see with traffic calming for Georgia Avenue. And if that is, I won't say approved because you're not approving it here at a study session, you're just going to give us guidance to accept this presentation as is, or make modifications if we have a quorum to do so. And then what we'd do from there is Kimley Horn would take this product and then move forward with the South Carolina Department of Transportation for coordination. And then they would go out and put out a request for proposals, an RFP, for a general contractor to do the work. And at that point in time, the staff and Kimley Horn would come back to City Council and request approval for the final contract amount out of Capital Project Sales Tax 4. So you'll have a formal council action that you will have to take, not this evening, but at a future council meeting about the overall cost of the project. So this is really the design, if you will, the final design that we'd like you to consider for this evening and take guidance from you all at this point in time. So with that, Joe, turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Clifford. Mayor and council, I'm pleased to be here with you all tonight to give you an update on the Georgia Avenue traffic calming project. I know many of you all have heard this presentation a couple times over the years, but I know there's also several new council members, so I'd like to get you all up to speed on where we've been, where we're at, and where we're headed. So we've been working on this project since 2022. Started out as a planning study to gather information to work towards fulfilling the city's vision of providing that vibrant pedestrian-oriented downtown core. So you can see here on this slide, we gathered traffic count data back in August of 2022, just to get an idea of how much traffic is currently on Georgia Avenue. So you can see on the southern end there, closest to the river, there was about 25,000 vehicles per day traveling up and down the roadway. As you move north and through downtown, traffic volumes kind of drop off as folks distribute and turn off on the side streets to get to and from neighborhoods and other destinations. and then it starts to pick up again on the northern end as you work north towards Martintown Road. In addition to the traffic count data, we also gathered speed data. As I'm sure you all are aware, 4-lane undivided Georgia Avenue, which is US 25. There's a decent amount of vehicular traffic that drives a bit faster than the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour through there. So combining that with on-street angle parking and the pedestrian activity, certainly something that we wanted to take a look at, calming that traffic and providing safer options for folks as they're going along Georgia Avenue. Next slide. So we looked into the future for our transportation planning studies. We normally go about 25 years out. We worked with the planning department to establish kind of how much the city's been growing over the last handful of years and what the projections are moving into the future. Based on that, we landed on this 2% average annual growth. So looking 25 years into the future, you know, if the city continues on that path and all the growth that's expected continues to occur, traffic volumes will continue to increase along Georgia Avenue. The biggest takeaway from this slide is that early on in the process, one of the options that we wanted to look into was the opportunity to do a road diet to reduce lanes on Georgia Avenue. Just based off the existing and projected traffic, it appears that the volumes are too high to be able to do that. So we quickly eliminated the feasibility of that option. We also pulled crash data through this process through South Carolina Department of Public Safety. So we pulled 5 years worth of data before we started the project. You can see here, this is what we call a hotspot map. So within that 5-year period, there was just over 300 crashes along Georgia Avenue. You can see the hotspots, particularly within the downtown core. You got Buena Vista Avenue, Spring Grove, and some kind of red in between, presumably associated with a lot of that on-street angle parking. We saw a lot of rear end and angle type crashes that you would expect to see kind of on a congested downtown roadway. Next slide. So through that process, we also had several meetings, the first of which was with property and business owners in October of 2022. So you can see the screen clip here. That's from a board with comments from those folks that attended that meeting. A lot of the feedback we got is, as you would probably expect, concerns about the on-street parking, how difficult it is to back out of those spots with traffic going pretty fast right behind you. Also a desire for improved pedestrian crossings, streetscapes, and then the perception of the speeding issues, which was confirmed by the data, and wanting to see traffic slow down through Georgia Avenue. So we also had a similar meeting with the public. So we had folks from the public come out. It was a lot of the similar feedback that we got. Traffic and congestion, speeding, improved safety options for pedestrians to make it more walkable in downtown, and then also any opportunities to work in streetscape and beautification improvements through this process. So one of the biggest or most prominent options that was identified was improving, crossings across Georgia Avenue, particularly right there at Pine Grove, where the Pink Dipper, there's currently the 2 crossings with the yield to pedestrian signs in the middle of the road. It's functional, but there's certainly a lot of room for improvement there. So this option was identified very early on. This is what's called an RRFB, or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That's the name for that. And I think that the city just put one of these in recently over at the West Avenue and Pine Grove intersection. So putting in a similar configuration on Georgia Avenue. If you go to the next slide, this will show you a little bit more specific of how it would look at that intersection. So you can see a big piece of what we're aiming to do here through calming traffic in downtown. There's currently pretty wide travel lanes through there. So if we can narrow up those lanes to 11 feet wide, that helps to slow traffic. It kind of narrows the geometry. Vehicles tend to not drive as fast when they don't have as much room on either side. By doing so, we then gain width to put in that 12-foot median, which then provides pedestrian refuge in the median. And through that, then we can put in the RRFB crossing. So you can see here just a quick diagram of what that looks like. It's got the signs and the flashing lights. Some of the feedback that we received through the process was also to include the in-road warning lights, which you can see the little image in the bottom there kind of looks like the top to a coffee mug. Those go down in the travel lanes and will flash to drivers to alert them that someone has pressed the button and is either about to be or is currently in the crosswalk. On the next slide, there's a quick little video that'll show you what that looks like at night. So if you're driving along and you can't see that, then probably shouldn't be driving. So yeah, just to give you an idea of what that looks like to help alert drivers that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. So now moving into the specifics, we'll go through kind of starting on the south end, just outside the building here at Center Street, and work our way to the north. So you can see here, this is from Center Street to Clifton Avenue. So not a whole lot of change here. We recommend narrowing those lanes to 11 feet to help calm and slow the traffic. Within the striped median, currently it's just normal asphalt. Some feedback that we got was to, help beautify the corridor through adding the stamped brick medians. There's an image at the bottom here that says you're getting into Riverview Park, approaching the rec center. It would be very similar to that on Georgia Avenue. So you can still drive on it, still make turning movements across it, but it helps define that median and adds some aesthetic features there as well. Another big piece of feedback that we got through this process was the addition of another RRFB crossing right there at Clifton Avenue, kind of connecting the two sides of the Veterans Parks with additional greenway extension that's going to come off of Bluff and then up through the alley, making that more walkable and pedestrian friendly down on this end of the corridor as well. Next slide. There we go. So continuing to move up the block, this is the Buena Vista intersection. Lane narrowing continues through here. Really the only major improvement here is enhancing the crosswalks, and this is another recommendation that goes throughout the study area. Enhancing the crosswalks to what we call the high visibility crosswalks, so it's the ladder style. There's a lot more retro-reflective paint in there, so they really glow and catch the driver's attention, particularly at night, but really enhances the fact that there is a crosswalk and a high likelihood for pedestrians. Additionally, another thing that we identified through this project is there's the current driveway right next to Cavalier's Coffee House. It was there years and years ago when it was a different business. For whatever reason, it's still there. So through this project, we would recommend eliminating that and just converting that back to additional grass landscape on the side of the road. So this is a more detailed view of the intersection we were looking at a couple slides back in the actual design phase. So this is Georgia Avenue at Pine Grove. So this is right there at the Pink Dipper and Sheila's Bakery, Parks Pharmacy, prominent intersection right there that currently has the crossings with the yield sign. So this would have the RRFB with the flashing lights that we saw a couple slides ago. You can see there's also the stamped brick median there to allow left turns to still go to and from side streets and driveways along there. One piece of feedback that we got from the public and from council, initially we had the median refuge a little bit longer, but it was starting to block the left turns into the Parks Pharmacy drive-through. So we modified that. We've shortened the median up to still allow space for a vehicle to make that left turn if needed. Looking to the north side of the intersection, we've got that shown as a landscaped median. So that would be a raised physical median with no left turns allowed across it. I know that city staff is taking a look at that to determine what type of shrubbery or plantings could go in there that wouldn't be a hindrance to sight distance along the corridor. You can see, and we'll get to it on the next slide here, to gain that space to be able to add the median, we recommend converting from the current parallel parking along the road, or sorry, current angled parking along the roadway, which takes up a lot of roadway width, converting that to parallel parking to be able to gain the width to put in the median, narrow the lanes. It's also a safer option. A big piece of feedback that we heard from the public and pretty much everyone that we've talked to was how unsafe it feels backing out of those angled parking spaces into oncoming traffic up and down Georgia Avenue. One other thing that we're still kind of tweaking at this point is ADA parking. Again, another piece of feedback that we received through our various meetings was the opportunity to relocate some of the ADA spaces throughout the project. So on the top of the page here, we're taking a look at if we can move that ADA parking space closer down to the wrecking crew, get a little closer to that business, since it's something that they would need and benefit from. So up in this this segment here, this is from Spring Grove Ave to Jackson Avenue. Really not a whole lot of change here other than converting the angle parking to parallel. As you may recall, in the earlier stages of the project, we had this with curb lines moving back. We had a median through here, things of that nature. After we got the survey information and looked at it a little bit further, it looked like moving those curbs back, even a small amount, you may start to impact the trees along the side of the road, which we know that's something that's very important to the city. So we've taken a step back from that at this point. Really, it's just converting the angle spaces to parallel to have consistency with the rest of the corridor. And then with the extra space that's still there, that could either be filled in with landscaping or wider sidewalks or whatever. We're still working through that at this point. So parking impacts is something that came up. It's always a trade-off between, on-street parking. Certainly with angle parking, you can squeeze a lot more in there. Certainly parallel, there's the safety benefits, and then you've got to have some push and pull between, whether your priority is on parking or is it on having the space to do these landscape medians and pedestrian refuge safety features and things of that nature. So this is a quick summary of the impacts to the overall parking on street within Georgia Avenue. So you can see overall, we would drop from a 58 existing parking spaces down to 41 on-street parking spaces. I will note that a couple of those spaces, particularly on the corner closest to Pine Grove, if you ever drive off of Pine Grove next to the North Augusta Feed and Seed, if you're making a left turn and you're looking to the left, there's a handful of cars that are parked there on the street and they're blocking your sight distance. Through this project, a couple of those spaces would go away, so that's part of the parking loss. Through our coordination with DOT that's going to be happening in the next couple months, we'll take a closer look at that and see if there's any wiggle room to gain some of that back. But for the moment, some of those spaces have been removed for sight distance. So getting into the next steps, as Mr. Clifford said, we're working through. We're certainly happy to take any feedback tonight for some tweaks here and there. But we're looking at continued coordination with staff, looking at the landscaping plan that I mentioned, and then probably sometime next month we'll be ready to submit these plans to SCDOT. We would anticipate probably up to a 6-month process to get all the way through permitting. Since we've already been in the loop and had discussions with them, we're hopeful that timeline can be compressed some and get things moving a little bit faster. But ultimately, we would expect to probably be back before you all probably sometime next summer, ready to submit the RFP for bid packages. So with that, I appreciate y'all's time and happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
I have a quick question. The parallel parking, the length of the parking spots. I think there was some discussion of them being a little longer to give people that aren't as skilled in parallel parking a better opportunity to park. Are those to scale there? Is that, do you have any dimensions on those spaces?
Yes, sir. Let me defer. I've got Khalil Bell from my roadway team with me here as well. It was, 22 feet. So that is a little bit longer. I believe the standard is 20. Yeah, so we've built in an extra 2 feet for buffer room.
Quick question. So that was some of the feedback that I got was about people can't parallel park. So with 2 feet, could you go forward and park? Probably not. I wouldn't think so. So you still would have to back up, correct? I guess right.
Yeah.
Is there been any studies done like other parking spots around behind the buildings? So say that you're at Pine Grove, there's so many spots this way behind the buildings or so many spots behind this building? Just to give people, another option to, well, if you can't parallel park, then don't park there and park behind the building. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I know there's been some discussion in the past, and I'm sure some of y'all may recall, it was a bit outside of the scope of what we did to look into parking opportunities outside, but I know that a lot of the parking behind the buildings, I believe, is privately owned. So I think there was some discussion of how, if the city could reach some agreement with those folks to provide that parking. Yes, sir. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So with that in mind, all of the new pedestrian ramps, if they need to be rebuilt to meet ADA grades, they will be. They will have the truncated dome, so textured, the yellow pads to alert folks that they're about to be crossing into the roadway. We talked to the vendor who does the RRFB, so the signal crossings. There are options if the city's interested. Certainly it's a little bit extra cost, but for audible alerts for folks that may be visually impaired. I don't know if you've been to some of the intersections where it'll say like, wait, and then it'll say walk once it's ready. So, and there's also, sensors that can be put in place. So a lot of those things we're trying to incorporate where we can.
I think it would mean a lot to the people that have given me this feedback that we try harder to make, especially, if we're going to be spending money downtown where we want people to shop, that we make sure that everybody can go down there and shop and do those things.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Good questions. This is good. Joe, thanks for listening.
All right. Appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
So just to make sure we've got council, at least consensus from a guidance perspective, that we're going to take this package, at least as the base, and move to coordination with SCDOT, and then some of the options you may be wanting to consider, which includes things like an audio track as far as, whether you can walk or not walk, could be built in as options as far as the request for proposal. But the plan, as you've seen it, is what we're planning on taking to SCDOT at this point in time, barring objection from the council or substantive inputs that say we'd like to make changes to this plan. So I just want to make sure I'm getting the guidance from the
I
council.
don't, unless somebody says, I think we're all in agreement without voting that we like the plan and let's move forward.
Mr. Jim, is this state DOT money we're spending on this project?
No, this would be capital project sales tax, $4.
Thank you, sir.
So one of the projects listed under capital project sales tax 4 had to do with pedestrian safety in downtown, and this is how that would be covered. All right, subject to any questions, we'll go ahead and move into our second item this evening, which is Riverside Village, and I'll have them pull up the first slide. Thank you, Ricky. So this is something that we've been in dialogue with a number of folks here for a while about Riverside Village, but I wanted to put this out here in the public eye in front of the council this evening as far as an opportunity that may be available here to the city and be able to do a couple things at the same time. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. Just as a refresher, this is involving Department of Energy settlement funds. So this does not involve capital projects fund or general fund or penny sales tax funds. These were settlement dollars that the city of North Augusta was allocated through the South Carolina legislature, and we got 3 separate projects named in the Department of Energy settlement funds. First was the $2 million for the transfer station. Many of you went to the ribbon cutting that was there. We have some residual projects associated with the transfer station that we're finishing up now that were approved by council, including some storage buildings out by the transfer station, but those should be finishing up here in the spring. So ultimately, that $2 million for the transfer station should be finishing out here very shortly. We also have $15 million, which is listed as cyber infrastructure, and that's what we're going to talk about this evening. And then last, there's a $20 million set aside for the New Savannah Bluff lock and dam, and understanding that that's a long-term problem. We still have a number of folks involved in that, and that involves litigation and mediation. So there's no ability to action those $20 million at this point in time. But we do want to talk about the cyber infrastructure monies and an opportunity that came our way in discussion with things in Riverside Village. Next slide, please. So to highlight what you have there is the Riverside Village, and I've highlighted parcels B and D. So on your right-hand side, parcel B is listed as the stadium deck. Parcel D is what is currently being used as the construction yard for Fansler Construction, and that's catty corner across from the stadium. Riverside Village is in the precipice of being fully built out. Parcel C, which is directly across from the stadium, is obviously under construction and should be finished soon. Parcels G and H were combined. Those are the parcels down by the amphitheater, and those are largely complete. And then parcel K is the apartment building closest to Hammond's Ferry, which is also under construction. And so really at the end of the day, when those projects are all completed, you'll have only two parcels that are undeveloped. So you'll have parcel D, which is closest to the stadium, and you'll have parcel I, which is listed there near the amphitheater, and it's actually tucked behind the Ironwood Apartments closest to the Savannah River on Front Street. And the planning department did receive a proposal for townhomes on parcel I, so we anticipate that after Fansler finishes out their use of that lot, that Greenstone is going to move forward with a concept to build townhomes there. So ultimately what you have left is parcel D is the only unencumbered parcel that's left in discussion, and parcel B obviously is the stadium parking deck, which is the only privately owned parking apparatus in Riverside Village. So the city owns what was formerly known as the Medak deck directly across from City Hall. It owns the parking deck that services the Crown Plaza and the Riverside Village District as a whole, but parcel B there is privately owned. It is owned by Greenstone and administered by the Green Jackets as far as the daily O&M. Next slide. So I had contracted out through Cranston Engineering to look at a potential build site. And so what we asked them to do is not architectural renderings, but just to show us what size the building could actually fit on parcel D. And that includes the setbacks from the wetlands, that includes the height restrictions. And so essentially what you have there is the footprint of what one floor of a building could look like on parcel D, which should be fronted much closer to Railroad Avenue, but does not impede directly on the wetlands behind it. And based on our planning and development rules associated with Riverside Village, we could build up to a 4-story, or anybody could build up to a 4-story building on that lot. So if you take that 19,870 square foot, roughly 20,000 square foot, and go 4 stories, you could have up to 80,000 square foot of building on that site. That's what that site would accommodate going at that height. Next slide. So what we're looking at here is the potential of the city to purchase parcel D and parcel B. And parcel D would be a future cyber infrastructure building, much like a spec site for industrial parks, but you'd have the ability to put cyber in there, and that you'd have parcel B, the stadium deck, would be required for parking on parcel D, and that would give us a base cost estimate of about $5 million for the purchase of both items, the stadium deck and the parcel D itself, along with the tax credits associated with those parcels. So we had initially decided, or correction, discussed about the sale of this property potentially being completed by 2025. That's not going to be likely based on the timing of me showing up here in middle of December to talk to you about this. So that's going to bleed into 2026. And so we would want to lock in the cost of the $5 million base plus not making the seller pay the city taxes or county taxes going into the next year would be the concept. So there's still a lot to be discussed as far as what that building would look like on parcel D and what it could accommodate. But we have an opportunity at this point in time to purchase those two items for that rough approximation of $5 million. What that would do for us is do a couple things. One, we want to be able to move forward with cyber dollars. These Department of Energy settlement funds were allocated to the city several years ago, and the cost of construction and Cyber is not getting cheaper, so we want to be able to move forward on something sooner rather than later. And then also, what that's going to allow us to do is to consolidate parking in the village. And being able to have one vendor deal with parking, and when it comes to the stadium deck and the Crown Plaza deck, would be enormously helpful. Having multiple parking entities managing the Riverside Village parking, I think, is detrimental to the administration of the village. Next slide, please. So what I asked is we have Walter Goldsmith from Trian Capital and Joe Lucas, who is our outside counsel for all things Riverside Village, because this raises a number of questions. And some questions might be, hey, what does this do to the financial impact of the model of Riverside Village? And does this affect the city's ability to pay the debt service for Riverside Village? And having things that are publicly owned that do not generate taxes has a different model than a privately owned piece of property. And so those are the things that we wanted our financial advisors to come and talk to you about this evening, about even whether the concept is sound or not for the city to own those two parcels of land, not necessarily to discuss about what would be on parcel D in the long term. So with that, I'm going to ask Walter Goldsmith to come forward and talk through a little bit about the financial models and tell us what would be the impact on the village if we had publicly held parcels versus privately held parcels. Joe, and Walter, I turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I've got just a few brief slides. If we can go to the next slide and scroll through to the next one. So just to reorient everyone, in 2017, in May of 2017, the city borrowed right at $69.5 million to fund all of the project cost. What you see on this slide is a chart showing the principal and interest payments on that bond issue. And we had some revenues that we had projected, kind of various revenue sources to cover those principal and interest payments. But you'll see the payments increase over time, and then there's a period where they stair-step down in about 2035, and then they continue up. If we go to the next slide, I overlaid a red line just to show you what the projected revenues were. And the bullet point at the top of the page says that for every dollar of principal and interest that you owe each year, you had projected back in 2017 that you would have $1.13 to cover that. So that we call that the coverage ratio. And we worked all through 2016 and early 2017 to project out the individual revenue streams that make up that red line. And if we go to the next slide, I show on the left side of the page, and I know this information will be available for anybody that wants to see it afterwards. I show each of those revenue streams, and if you'll advance forward one slide, I've got kind of red circles around each one of them, and I'll just mention them briefly, and then we'll talk about kind of how they've performed since 2017. So what you see again on this slide were the projections that we put together in that 2016-17 timeline. So that was before the stadium was built, before the hotel was built, before any restaurants. But basically, we went through each individual revenue stream. And the first two columns are called existing TIF revenues and then new TIF revenues. Those were essentially the new property taxes that the city was going to receive from all of the development that would occur, both related to exactly what the developer was going to build, hotel, office buildings, apartment buildings, et cetera, and everything in the broader TIF district. Then you'll see a column that says net parking revenues. Those were the projected parking revenues off of the garages that were to be built. And I'll come back and talk about that in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides. Then you'll see a column that says hotel accommodation tax revenues. Those were for anyone who stays in the hotel down there in the village. When they check out, they see on their bill an accommodations tax. That's what that column represents. So we had to project average occupancy in the hotel, average daily room rate for the hotel. Then you'll see a column that says hospitality tax revenues. Those are anybody that goes to a restaurant. When you get your bill, you see the tax that's applied to that. So we made a projection. At the time, you were levying a 1% hospitality tax. You later increased it to 2%, but this column only reflects the 1%. And then you'll see a column that says baseball stadium revenues, essentially rent paid by the team, some naming rights, some other revenues that went into that. All of that totaled out to the right, that column, which represents the red line. So you projected that you would have enough revenue that would grow over time to make those principal and interest payments. If we go to the next slide, what we now show in more detail is, well, let's look back. It's 2025. So how have the actual revenues performed compared to what we projected? So the table at the top of the page shows what we projected from the prior slide. The table at the bottom of the slide shows you the actual revenues. And if we advance forward one slide, I just kind of graphed that out to the right. And if you go forward one more slide, we kind of highlighted in red in that chart up to the right how your actual revenues are performed. And the punchline is you've greatly exceeded what we projected in just about every category except parking. And so that's why the importance of the city taking over this parking garage, acquiring it, and then being able to operate a unified parking strategy makes sense. But if you just want to kind of let your eye go to the 2024 row, which is the last row at the top table and the last row at the bottom table, to just compare for the last full year and look all the way out to the right, you'll see back in 2016, we were projecting that you would have $4.5 million of revenue. You actually last year had $6.1 million of revenue. So you've been beating in every category. Again, this shows just the accommodations tax for the hotel in the village and just the 1% H tax, not the second 1% that you started to levy. If you layered in other accommodation tax revenue that you're collecting and that additional 1%, you'd outperform by an even wider margin. So when Jim first reached out and said, we're thinking about acquiring the parking garage and thinking about acquiring the other undeveloped parcel and putting an office building on it, is there a negative impact to the financial model from the debt that you issued? The short answer is no. You're just performing so well. I mean, none of us can guarantee that you won't have a huge recession in the future, but you've got a really diverse revenue stream. The one area that has consistently underperformed is the parking. And so we think an ancillary benefit of this strategy, in addition to the cyber building and getting a building developed on that currently undeveloped site, is having a more unified parking strategy that'll be better for the visitors who go in to park. So we wanted to just kind of briefly try to share in tables and graphs how the revenues have been performing and to give you the peace of mind that you've been nicely outperforming and so we don't have a concern about the ability for you to continue to make the principal and interest payments on that debt. So I'm happy to take questions on that, and then I think if not, Joe Lucas is going to talk to kind of mechanically the next steps you would need to do to acquire these two parcels. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having me tonight. Jim asked me to just go through next steps, kind of legal process, who the parties would be. Go to the next slide. Who's in? Amy is. Thank you. So quickly, I flipped some things around from the last time you all saw this, but we're going to start off by entering into purchase and sale agreements for the parcels B and D. You do separate agreements. I think the current plan is to lock in the price that Jim has talked about. Kelly has been talking to the Greenstone folks about a purchase option. So we're going to lock that in for a period of time, and we would come to you, go to the next slide, where the detail is. We'd come to you for approval by resolution of these two purchase and sale agreements. So that'd be step one. And then those purchase and sale agreements would have some conditions in them, which would include getting the proper public approvals to be able to make this transition and have the city own parcels B and D. So that would be done by ordinance first, approving a major modification to the general development plan for Hammond's Ferry. You did that last year when we did the larger acquisition by South City Partners of parcels C, G, H, and K from Greenstone. So done this before. It's not going to be quite as complicated. Tommy and his team have already been working on a document just to kind of eyeball what this would look like. There'll be a joint application to the Planning Commission from the city and the current owners of the parcels, and Greenstone is the master developer. You would go through the normal planning process. You'd have a public hearing, go to Planning Commission, assuming Planning Commission gave this a go-ahead, it would come back to you for first and second readings of an ordinance adopting those major modifications, which is mostly just the adjustment of D from retail residential to office. So in addition, you've got the existing master development agreement. We've amended it 4 times before for various reasons, mostly to extend the term, but last year was a more significant amendment in connection with the South City acquisition. This time it would be changing that office, retail residential use to office for parcel D, and providing for the city's ownership of B and D, which aren't currently contemplated in the development agreement. Greenstone is the master developer, and then the owners of parcels B and D, and probably also South City would all need to be party to that amendment. You would approve that by ordinance. This time you would also have a public hearing at the first reading because you won't have planning involved in that. And that could be done simultaneously with the general development plan resolution, so we could time that, assuming we could, get to planning at the right time. I think currently we're looking at going to planning in January. Next slide, please. So a couple of additional agreements we'll need to work on. As Jim and Walter have talked about, this would be consolidating all parking. Last year, we did a full amendment and restatement of the master parking agreement for the village. We would need to toss out the old one and do an all-new agreement, of course, because then the city would now be controlling all the parking. I know JD and has been working hard on the parking aspects, and so we'd be working with him and Jim to put together a comprehensive parking plan that works and that allows sort of a comprehensive, solid plan that the citizens are happy about. I know that there was a lot of public comment last year about parking and safety, and so this will be a good opportunity to really take care of that. In addition to these items 5 and 6, a couple of amendments. One is an amendment to the parking operating agreement for the hotel deck. Because we're amending and restating the master parking agreement, we'll need to make some adjustments to the hotel deck agreement. And then there's a current management agreement for the stadium deck. Obviously, that would need to change. We'd have a new agreement. And then I've just got one other item for other agreements as necessary. Things may come up as we go through, but that process, I think, would be in the first couple of months of 2026, assuming you all approve to go ahead with this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
If we can move over to the original slide deck, Ricky, we'll go ahead and. Guidance requested. There you go. Keep rolling through. Or go back. There you go. So what we're asking for from the staff perspective is, from a guidance perspective, is allow us to continue coordination. Obviously, what Joe Lucas laid out is pretty complex. There are a lot of moving parts as far as things that the Planning Commission would have to do, things that the City Council would have to do. So there's a lot of actions that would have to occur in the next 90 days or so as far as things that the council would have to consider. But what we're looking for tonight from the council, and we're open to questions, whether it's from concepts or financials or legal matters about this concept of the city owning parcels B and D so they would become public use facilities, and us doing a spec building, if you will, on parcel D for cyber. We can't just have the parking deck. The money that we have from the Department of Energy settlement funds is specifically earmarked for cyber infrastructure, so we can't just go buy a parking deck and call it good. We're still going to have to do the follow-on action of putting something that is cyber-centric there at parcel D. We've looked at a number of different pieces of real estate, but in our discussion with a number of folks, to include a lot of leadership at the Georgia Cyber Center and also at Fort Gordon, that geography matters, and that the best locations that we have here in North Augusta relative to partnerships with some of those key organizations would either be in Riverside Village or in downtown. So this would allow us to meet a number of different requirements. I think it's great that this would help alleviate some of the parking problems as far as from an ownership perspective, but it also allows us to move forward finally on a concept within the cyber infrastructure that we'd be looking to develop over time. So with that, I will pause for questions and guidance from the council. And again, we've got all our experts here in the room, so we're prepared to answer any line of questions you may have.
I'll start. I don't have a whole lot of questions. Just as far as input, I'm generally in favor of us continuing to pursue this. But for the sake of the public, and you've already spoken to this a little bit, can you just explain the DOE settlement? I know it's got to be used for cyber infrastructure. Just kind of provide in layman's terms what that means, what the restrictions on it are, where did that money come from, just so we have a better understanding of that.
Absolutely. So the state of South Carolina had sued the federal Department of Energy in relation to the shutting down of the Savannah River site, or at least closeting some of the features they had there, and where they downsized the site. That happened years and years ago. That litigation went on for quite some time. My understanding is the state of South Carolina came to a settlement with the federal government to the tune of something a little over $600 million. And the way that money was distributed was up to the state legislature. And so that discussion actually occurred, I think, in my first 90 days on the job here in the city of North Augusta in 2020, where the legislation delegates, in our particular case, Senator Tom Young and Representative Bill Hickson, reached out and said, hey, what are the kinds of things that you're looking to do here in the city, and propose some projects. And we gave out a number of projects. Not every project that you put on the table is amenable. So, for example, fire trucks was not something that competed well across any of the municipalities. But they tried to, I think, and I don't want to speak for Senator Young or Representative Hickson, but my understanding is they tried to advocate for the communities that are hardest hit by the downsizing of the Savannah River site. So Aiken County, Edgefield County, Barnwell County, a number of Allendale, a number of other counties that would get a significant share of those settlement funds, but then other funds also went across the state of South Carolina. So at the end of the day, the city of North Augusta was allocated $37 million in total, and $2 million for the transfer station, 15 for cyber infrastructure, and 20 for the new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam. And so there, unlike ARPA came with an enormous textbook of rules from the federal government about how that money had to be spent and how that is moved forward. There were very few limitations associated with Department of Energy settlement funds to the recipient cities and counties. However, in discussion with the city attorney and also with our financial advisors, we felt that as long as we stayed within those three project areas, that the city would be the safest to move forward. Like, we don't want to spend any of those dollars on things that wouldn't be considered either a transfer station or cyber infrastructure or new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam. And so the money has come from this Department of Energy settlement fund. That money is being held, I believe, at the county for the city. We've already gone through the draw process and doing the transfer station, so we know what that set of procedures are. And then, again, just to reiterate, it does not impact our general fund, does not impact the taxpayer, at least locally. Maybe impacts the federal taxpayer, but does not impact the property taxes or business license fees or anything associated here in the city. This was money that was allocated through the legislature through the federal settlement. So again, this money has got to be used in those very specific ways and has to be able to be accounted for. There's obviously a lot of eyes on those dollars at the state legislature level as well. And my finance director, Linda Williams, sitting to my left, you're right, has gone through that process with the Department of Energy money for the transfer station, and we would follow a very similar process that we can show through an audit trail what those funds go to and that they're tied to that project. So I don't know if that fully answered your question, Councilman, but
Yeah, no, that was what I was looking for. The only follow-up is there a time limit on when it has to be used, and what happens if we don't use it?
there's not a stated time limit, but I would say that I'd like to think I'm a smart bureaucrat, and smart bureaucrats look for other people's money. And so if that money wasn't allocated or at least lined up against a project, I would consider that money at risk at some point in time for the legislature to reapportion if that was that came to the fore. So I'd like to, considering we've had this money set aside for a period of time, I'd like to at least advance the concept or the theory for the council to consider as far as moving forward.
Mr. Clifford, the parcel D, talked about that building, 4 levels, more of a shell of a building that would be able to be used by a client or a potential renter or purchaser. Would that building always remain in the city ownership, or are there other uses for it?
I think the current concept that the staff is proposing is that it would be a city-owned building, that we would have tenants or renters in that facility. We've had some outreach with a number of companies, but we're not to mention at this point in time because they haven't locked anything, and obviously because we don't own the building. And then I would also tell you is that I'm just showing you that what is in the art of the possible as far as the footprint. That's a very different thing to say that, hey, the remaining 10 million or so out of that 15 million is going to have to be used to the build. And, as we talk to architects and engineers, they may come back and say, hey, for the amount of money you actually have, you can build a 2-story building or you can build a 3-story building. What I'm just showing is that the maximum capacity of that lot, based on the planning and development rules that we have and the setbacks from the wetlands, is that's just shy of 80,000 square foot is what could be built. But the reality is, until we actually put against an engineering plan, we're not going to know what we're dealing with as far as the height of the building.
How close does this building get to the brick ponds?
I'll have to go back and look at the overall setbacks, but there's a setback requirement from the wetlands, and this building meets those setback requirements.
Will this garner a public input session for people to come in and if they have concerns?
I believe that our attorney, Joe Lucas, laid out, I think, 2 public input sessions. One would be through a planning commission venue, and another here at the city council.
I guess I'll keep going then. I understand the point that the removal of those parcels from the tax register has minimal impact on the financial model because of the performance of the financial model. But can we get just an idea of what the deterioration in tax revenue will be by removing those, just the actual number?
I'd have to defer to Walter on that one.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay, I figured it was somewhere in that range. Just wanted to have a number. But yeah, that's great, Walter. Thank you.
A quick question. So if we say that we do this, but decide not to do it at Riverside, the village, has there been other parcels or land that, that we've looked at? I'm just saying what ifs is what I'm saying.
Councilman, we have looked at other real estate and other land, and I think, as you know, as you went through the Joint Planning Commission City Council trolley ride, there is not a whole lot of real estate that is in play at this point in time.
I know it's hard to say, but because we don't know how big of a building we can get, but I guess, would you estimate that revenue received from any tenants in that building would be enough to offset the loss of tax revenue?
Councilman, I wouldn't say that. I would say that by going in position is that the city's going to own this building, that building would at least be revenue neutral, so that it would pay for itself, for the O&M of the building, HVAC maintenance, all the things, because we're not entirely sure what kind of client base we're going to have. It could be more academia, it could be more corporate. So the type of tenant you would get, I think, would drive very heavily what kind of revenue line you could have. I think it's safe to say, from a planning perspective, and what my guidance to Walter and Joe and the rest of our advisors is that we would assume from parcel D that there was no revenue coming off of that parcel as they did their math problem looking out into the future. Any revenue that we were able to capture off that would be beneficial and a bonus, but I didn't want to cook it into a model to show that we were counting on revenue coming off that site.
Would you kind of just tell a little bit, use the Georgia Cyber Center model? We're not saying this is what it's going to be, but I do think for folks it's helpful to have a a picture of how these type of cyber centers are being used between private, public, and academic. So
Again, not speaking as a Georgia staff member, but I would tell you that my understanding of the Georgia Cyber Center is that their doctrine, if you will, is that they are the three-legged stool, that they have government, they have academia, and they have corporate interests that are there in that building. And I could certainly see a much smaller three-legged stool. And as I've had some discussions with the leadership of the Georgia Cyber Center, we don't view this as a competitive landscape as far as trying to steal people out of the Georgia Cyber Center. They got here the first of the most in the area. We're not going to compete with a $100 million investment from the state of Georgia into our backyard. But I think there's a lot of partnership opportunities with the state of South Carolina, with the academic institutions that are here locally that have expressed an interest in establishing a footprint in North Augusta. And also we look at a number of other corporate interests that are interested in doing things here in North Augusta as well. And you could go through a couple different scenarios. You could have a scenario that shows, hey, the building would have nothing but Class A office space. You could also have a scenario where if you had multiple floors, some of those floors are fully built out with Class A office space, and other floors are shells, because you see in the Georgia Cyber Center, some of their floors there aren't built out, so that a Northrop Grumman or a large defense integrator, a Peraton, a Mantech, whoever, can come in and build a SCIF, a secure compartmentalized information facility, so they can do classified work in that space. And so when they have those spaces, they usually don't want to start with Class A office space. They want to start with the shell so they can put all the Tempest material that's required to make that a secure facility. So there's a lot of different, I think, options as we would look at this, but we haven't had quite a mature conversation with some of the potential vendors and clients because we don't own a building yet, nor do we have a piece of land to put it on. So I think these are all great questions, but we haven't matured the concept to a point to say, hey, this building is going to be 3 stories tall, it's going to have this tenant, it's going to have this kind of academic component, nor is it going to have this kind of government component. I've been in dialogue with some government agencies, state agencies, not federal, about potentially having a footprint here in the building. And the answer is, hey, let's see what you do as far as getting space first, and then we can come talk about it. But I think there's some opportunities there for us to have a variety of presence here in the village.
And I think it's fair to say this is not something that just has come up overnight. Jim has been talking about, we have wanted as a community to have a cyber footprint for years. And, Fort Gordon is a cyber command for the entire U.S. Army. It's not going away. We have a very good relationship. I say we, I'm talking about the city perception, but as far as administration, with Augusta State, with the Georgia Cyber Center, they love the idea of an incubator, so USC Aiken Tech. So this is something that we're just now beginning to talk as a council right now, but this is not something that just has come up overnight. We're just now at a point, because we don't have a hurricane and a lot of other things we've been doing, we're now at a point to begin looking at it. So
I think also just
I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. I think also to keep in mind too is the value proposition of owning the stadium deck, which I believe was built for between $8 and $9 million. So for us to be able to get the stadium deck and the land to build the cyber center on in a very contested area from a real estate perspective would be a good opportunity.
It's kind of a two-part question. Let's theoretically say 40 years goes by and AI takes out need for human involvement in information technology altogether. Are we stuck with an empty building we can't use, or will we be able to use this building for something else at that point?
Councilman, I for one welcome my AI overlords and hope that they... I think in all seriousness, Councilman, it really comes down to the concept design that we have, and that Class A office space is Class A office space. I don't want to say that my intent would be to convert it to something else, because what we're telling the state legislature is, hey, we're going to be doing something with cyber, and that could look like an awful lot of range of options that could involve the Aiken County School District, as far as classroom space for things that they could do through Aiken Tech, through USC Aiken. So even if it comes down to, hey, it's 40 years from now they're in a different space, cyberspace, the way that the Army defines it's pretty broad. And so there's a lot of different activities that contribute to that. So I don't think there's a whole lot of risk there as far as the cyber domain being, not relevant at that point in time. I don't think I can build, though, in being in spirit with the, not necessarily the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to turn that into a grocery store and at a market or something like that, because that's not what that money was allocated for the city.
Yeah, understood. Just trying to fill out if any way this investment leaves us with a shell of the building that we can't do anything else with at some point. So I guess kind of part B where I want to go with this is if we build this building, we build it 3 stories, and we make 1-story cyber, could we do what we wanted with the other 2 stories?
I think that's a great question, and the short answer right now, Councilman, is I don't know. I think that we'd have to really mature the concept to know what size building we could afford to build. We have not engaged. The only thing we asked Cranston Engineering to do for us at a fairly low cost was what would fit on the lot. What kind of footprint of the building would fit on the lot, not necessarily any additional engineering or architecture design work, nor cost to say, okay, in order to, if you had a 1-story building, it would cost this, or a 2-story building would cost this, or a 3-story building would cost this. That's not the level of detail that I have to be able to present to you today. But you could make an argument for, can a portion of the building be used for something that's non-cyber? I know the original concept for Riverside Village included a public safety substation. I don't believe that's going to be in any of the current buildings that are built. So is there room for like a little set aside at the base of the building for public safety? Maybe. Could there other things that be kind of nested within that facility? I think the answer is possibly. But I think the nuts and bolts of what that facility is to be for, in order for us to survive an audit or have a be sit in front of a Senate committee somewhere in the state of South Carolina, I want to be able to look at them and say, hey, this is the primary focus of this building, was for cyber.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? I think I'm not hearing any concerns as far as reasons not to at this point. I think what we're saying is the guidance is let's move on to the next step. Correct.
I would like to know what kind of impact this does have on the brick ponds directly, if that's something we could look at. Building so close to it, up to a 3 to 4 story building.
I think we can certainly at least get you the setback information. I don't believe there was any concerns from a wetlands perspective. And obviously the rules associated with building near wetlands are more restrictive than in greenfield construction, so to speak. But I'm not a expert on the wildlife in the brick pond, so I don't want to tell you that, hey, 0 impact.
Kayla, we can get that. All right, very good.
All right, with that, let's go to our third topic. It's been a while since we talked about utility billing, so I wanted to go ahead and get this in front of the city council because we're going to be doing some changes as far as procedurally as we go into 2026, barring any negative feedback from the council on this. So next slide. So just as an update, this is more of a timeline piece. You can see that about this time last year, that was the last time we had done a shutoff for non-payment for any city water utility customers. We stopped charging late fees in February. We obviously had some challenges there through the spring. We're able to get billing back on track starting in May, at least getting bills out. And then we were able to get all of our billing straight through the July-August timeframe. And so we're now coming up on 120 days or so of consistent billing, first and second cycle through the city. During this entire time, we have not charged late fees, nor have we done shutoffs. And I think that was the right decision for the citizens until we could get ourselves straight out. And as we are today, regular billing is occurring on time and is inaccurate. The auto draft procedures continue to go as they have been. Those are going on as per normal. We have an online payment portal which is functional. And then what the change from customers from last year is that they can see their invoice history online, which is not something that we had previously through the old system. So there's a new feature there for folks to deal with. But that's the current status of things. So let's move to the next slide. So let's talk about the city billing way ahead. At some point in time, we are going to have to move back into the late payment model. We have just about 10% of our accounts are 90 days or more delinquent. That's 1,267 total accounts, of which 172 haven't made any payments in 2025. So we've got to get folks caught back up. That's a revenue line for the city, and it's not just to have money, but because that pays the salaries of our water employees. It pays for the chemicals to treat the water. It pays for the capital that we have, the water plant. It pays for things we're doing with the Clay Street pump station. It pays for the water tower infrastructure. So this isn't money just to have it. This is a business line that we have that provides a critical utility for our citizens, which is the water. So what we're proposing here in front of City Council and the public is that we would like to start next month moving back into standard billing. Now, we understand that we have a number of citizens that are behind, and some of them more than 90 days, and it's going to be hard for them to absorb making all their payments in a very short amount of time. And so Linda Williamson here has got a payment plan which would allow them to get caught up through the end of the calendar year of 2026. And at that point in time, they'd be good to go. But they would have to register for a payment plan to say, hey, I need additional time to get caught up on our services, and then that's how we would do it. And this would be advertised on the Facebook, on lobby postings, through the automated call system, and also posting on their bill. And what this would allow that to be is that if you or somebody, for example, who hasn't paid at all, the 172 folks there, that they would be charged 2 times their water bill all the way through until they got caught up. So, for example, if I'm using very round numbers, but if you had a citizen that owed $1,000 in their water payments in 2025 and only had $800 worth of billing in 2026, they would still have to make up that total $1,000 by the end of the calendar year. But we would not bill them more than 2 times their current bill going forward. We would also say that the shutoffs would be going there going forward. So if there was no payment plan filed by the end of January, at that point in time, folks that were 90 days or more delinquent on their plan would have their water shut off in the next cycle. So what that would essentially mean is that the disconnects would start in February, and they'd be on different cycles. So you have your 2 cycles, so you start seeing things in February. So no shutoffs in January. So this gives time for us to have this plan put out there on paper and on the internet for our citizens to kind of absorb, and then also have the month of January to put together their payment plan through finance. And be able to start getting caught up with the billing options. And we've also still left the customer service line in place that we stood up as we went to GovSense, so that if we have customer concerns or questions about how billing is going to work moving forward as far as disconnects and late fees, that we'll be able to answer those questions at that point in time. So I'll pause because the meat of my presentation is here on this slide.
Question: Will the late fee will not apply to someone who has a payment plan in effect? So even though they may owe $800 on their bill,
So the details of the payment plan say that you agree to pay your payments on the due date, and if you fail to meet that agreement, you will be disconnected the next day. So therefore, there will not be a late fee because you will just be disconnected.
right? But if you're on a payment plan, say you owe $800,
Correct.
and your bill's $50, and your payment plan is, I'm going to pay $100.
Right. So no
You're
late
not paying
fees
a late
will
fee
no
as
late
long as they're
fees
participating in the plan,
no late fees on payment plan customers
Right.
unless they fail to meet their.
unless they fail to meet. I think it's fair. I mean, I would think not many people would be surprised that they have to pay their utility bill, and they've had an awful.
172 people, don't.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
We would also provide a copy of this payment plan to Kimona, because I know Kimona deals a lot with folks that have difficulties meeting some of their financial requirements. So we'd want to make sure they were brought up to speed as well, so they understand the rules of the payments. And so if they are going to provide any kind of financial assistance to our citizens, that they at least understand what those parameters are. Next slide. That was it, so.
So we are going to, besides posting something on the bill, so I guess that goes out in our December bill because their January bill, that first time. I guess my question would be, if we're going to call people, I mean, we've got to be pretty intentional about what that looks like to make sure, because at the end of the day, what I don't want is for us not to be able to document that we've reached out.
Yes. So the way that we will handle that is we will pull all the accounts, and it's an automated phone system. So we just upload the numbers in, and it will be a generic, late fees and disconnections will start up in February. So every account active that we have will get that call probably into this week.
It would seem very possible to me if someone hasn't paid their water bill, they probably haven't paid their phone bill either, may not have an active phone.
I think, Councilman Felak, I would hate to debate that because if the phone company will definitely turn you off.
They will.
If you do not pay your phone bill, but we gave a lot of grace, basis on the implementation of a new system.
No, being in the rental business for a while, I know they just go out and get another phone. So the phone number that's listed isn't an accurate one. But we will consider the call as an official notice to them, even if they don't get it.
Well, they'll not only get the call, they'll get it on their bill notice.
Their bill as well.
As I have no more questions, Mr. Mayor and Council, that's the conclusion of our staff portion of the study session this evening. I appreciate your time and attention. I turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor Williams.
Okay. I thought this was very well done. Thank you all for participating. Good questions. Thank you, council. Very good questions. And we stand adjourned.